As I pulled up to the curb and parked the car, a familiar sense of dread crept up my spine. It was the first day of school, and I knew I'd have to face my ex-husband Ethan and his new wife Cassidy at the drop-off line. I took a deep breath, turning to my husband, Dean, who gave me a reassuring squeeze on my hand. "You've got this, Lila. I'm right here with you," he said, his warm brown eyes locking onto mine. I nodded, steeling myself for the inevitable confrontation. Dean and I stepped out of the car, our kids, Mason and Harper, bounding ahead of us, excited for their first day back. "Mason, Harper, slow down, wait for us," I called out, hurrying to catch up. As we approached the school entrance, I saw them. Ethan, standing tall and imposing, Cassidy draped on his arm, her tight dress and heavy makeup drawing all the wrong kind of attention. Well, if it isn't the happy little family," Ethan sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. I felt Dean's hand on the small of my back, a silent reminder that I wasn't alone. "Ethan, Cassidy," I replied, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil raging inside me. Cassidy narrowed her eyes, her ruby-red lips curling into a smirk. "Lila, fancy seeing you here. I must say, you're looking a bit tired. I guess chasing after 2 kids can really take it out of a woman." I clenched my jaw, fighting the urge to lash out. Instead, I simply squeezed Dean's hand, drawing strength from his presence. "The kids are doing great, thanks for asking," Dean interjected, his tone light but firm. "Mason's been counting down the days until he could see his friends again." Ethan's gaze shifted to our son, a cruel glint in his eyes. "Yes, I'm sure he has, though I wonder how long it'll be before he starts asking about his real father." Mason, oblivious to the tension, bounced on his heels, eager to join his classmates. Harper, sensing the hostility, pressed closer to me, her small hand gripping mine tightly. "Ethan, that's enough," I said, my voice low but unyielding. "The kids are off limits, and you know it." Ethan leaned in, his face mere inches from mine. "Oh, Lila, you know I'm not the one who's off limits here. Maybe if you'd been a better wife, I wouldn't have had to find other outlets." I felt the blood rush to my face, fury and humiliation burning through me. Before I could respond, Cassidy let out a shrill laugh, drawing the attention of the other parents. "Oh, Ethan, darling, you always did have a way with words." Poor Lila, still trying to cling to her dignity, even after all these years. The confrontation was spiraling, and I knew I had to get my kids away from this toxic mess. I took a step forward, putting myself between Ethan and our children. "That's enough. Come on, kids, let's get you to class." As I turned to leave, Ethan's voice rang out, laced with malice. "This isn't over, Lila, not by a long shot." I froze, the implication of his words sending a chill down my spine. Something told me this was just the beginning of a much bigger battle. The confrontation with Ethan and Cassidy played in my mind on a loop as I drove home from dropping the kids off at school. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles turning white, fury simmering just below the surface. How dare he? After everything he put me through, he still had the audacity to stand there and mock me in front of our children. The nerve of him, using our son as a pawn in his twisted games. I slammed my hand against the dashboard, the sharp pain grounding me. No, I wouldn't let him get to me. Not this time. I was done being the victim. As soon as I got home, I headed straight for my home office, booting up my computer with a sense of grim determination. If Ethan thought he could continue to undermine me, he had another thing coming. Fingers flying across the keyboard, I began digging, searching for any sign of his underhanded tactics. It didn't take long before I uncovered a disturbing pattern. Invoices, emails, and financial records that painted a clear picture of Ethan's relentless efforts to sabotage my career. "That bastard," I muttered under my breath, rage building with every new piece of evidence I uncovered. He had been systematically undermining my projects, spreading rumors about my competence, and even going so far as to interfere with potential clients and business partners, all in a calculated attempt to force me back into his orbit, to make me dependent on him once more. I leaned back in my chair, mind racing, as I tried to process the magnitude of his betrayal. After all these years, after the pain and heartbreak he had already caused, he was still consumed by his need to control me. "Lila, honey, what's wrong?" I looked up to see Dean standing in the doorway, his brow furrowed with concern. I'd been so lost in my own thoughts that I hadn't heard him come in. "It's Ethan," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. He's been sabotaging my work, Dean, all this time. He's been trying to undermine me, to force me back to him. Dean's expression hardened, his jaw clenching as he absorbed the information. That son of a bitch. I knew he was trouble, but this... He moved closer, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. What are you going to do? I met his gaze, my resolve hardening. I'm going to fight back. I'm not going to let him win. Not this time. Dean nodded, his eyes shining with pride. I'm with you, Lila. Whatever you need, I'm here. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world lift from my shoulders. With Dean by my side, I knew I could take on Ethan and win. I'm going to need your help, I said, already formulating a plan in my mind. I've got to start gathering more evidence, build a case against him, and I know just the person who can help. I reached for my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Alex, an old friend and a brilliant lawyer, had always had my back. If anyone could help me take Ethan down, it would be him. As I pressed the call button, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was my chance to finally break free from Ethan's grasp, to reclaim my life, and build a future with the man I loved. Whatever it took, I was ready to fight. The call to Alex was a godsend. As soon as I explained the situation to him, he jumped into action, his legal expertise and sharp mind immediately honing in on the best course of action. Leela, this is a serious case of harassment and financial sabotage, he said, his voice laced with concern. We're going to need to gather as much evidence as possible to build a strong case against Ethan. I nodded, feeling a weight lifted from my shoulders. I've already started digging, and the proof of his underhanded tactics is mounting. I can't believe he's been doing this all along. Alex let out a low whistle. Sounds like he's been playing the long game. Well, we're not going to let him get away with it. I'll start putting together a legal strategy, and I want you to keep gathering everything you can. We're going to take this bastard down. I felt a surge of gratitude and relief wash over me. Thank you, Alex. I don't know what I'd do without you. Hey, that's what friends are for, he replied, his tone reassuring. I've got your back, Lila. We're going to make sure Ethan pays for his crimes. As I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. With Alex on my side, I knew I had a fighting chance against Ethan's relentless schemes. But just as I was about to dive back into my research, my phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed Cassidy's number. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of whether to answer, but something in me compelled me to pick up. Hello? Lila, it's Cassidy. Her voice sounded strained, and I could hear the faint sound of crying in the background. Cassidy, what's wrong? I asked, my heart racing. It's Ethan, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I found something in his accounts, and I think he's been lying to me. I felt a surge of sympathy despite the history between us. What did you find? Cassidy took a shaky breath. Massive debts, suspicious transfers, and a lot of it seems to be tied to his business dealings with you. Lila, I think he's been using me to cover up his own financial troubles. I sat back in my chair, mind reeling. So Ethan had been keeping Cassidy in the dark about his true financial state. The realization that his new wife was unaware of his underhanded tactics only added to the complexity of the situation. Cassidy, I'm so sorry you're going through this, I said, my voice soft. But I want you to know that I had no idea about any of this. Ethan has been trying to sabotage me for years, and I've only just uncovered the extent of his schemes. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line, and then Cassidy spoke up again, her voice laced with a newfound determination. Lila, I want to help. If what you're saying is true, then I need to know the full extent of Ethan's deception. I can't be a part of this anymore. I felt a surge of surprise at her words, but I quickly recovered, recognizing the opportunity before me. Cassidy, I'd be grateful for your help. Let's work together to expose Ethan and put an end to his lies. As I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but feel a sense of cautious optimism. Perhaps Cassidy, an unlikely ally, could be the key to finally bringing Ethan down. With Alex's legal expertise and Cassidy's newfound cooperation, I finally felt like I had a fighting chance against Ethan's relentless scheming. Together, we began to meticulously piece together the evidence of his underhanded tactics, building a solid case that would expose his true nature. Okay, here's what we've got so far, Alex said, his brow furrowed in concentration as he reviewed the documents spread out on the conference table. Ethan has been systematically undermining your business dealings, sabotaging your contracts, and even going so far as to interfere with your client relationships. I nodded, my jaw set with determination. The proof is all there, Alex. He's been trying to force me back into a position of financial dependence on him. Cassidy, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up, her voice laced with a mixture of anger and betrayal. I can't believe he's been doing this. All this time, I thought he was just a successful businessman. I had no idea the extent of his deception. Alex reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand on Cassidy's arm. I know this is a lot to take in, but we're going to make sure Ethan pays for his crimes. Lila, I think the best course of action is to start exposing his unethical practices to his business partners and stakeholders. I felt a surge of determination coursing through me. Let's do it. I'm ready to bring him down. Over the next few days, Alex and I worked tirelessly, compiling the evidence and crafting a strategic plan to methodically dismantle Ethan's carefully constructed facade. We reached out to his business partners, alerting them to his shady dealings, and leveraged Cassidy's inside knowledge to further strengthen our case. The ripple effects were immediate. Ethan's business ventures began to crumble as his partners and investors grew increasingly wary of his questionable practices. I watched with a sense of vindication as the man who had once held such power over me slowly started to lose his grip. But just when I thought we were making headway, Ethan struck back, launching a vicious attack on my company. I received a panicked call from one of my employees, informing me that a major client had abruptly pulled out of a lucrative contract, citing concerns about my leadership and the company's stability. "Damn it, Ethan," I muttered, slamming my fist against the desk. "He's not going to give up without a fight." Alex's eyes narrowed, his brow furrowing in concentration. This is exactly the kind of move I was expecting from him. But we're not going to let him win. We've got a solid case, and we're going to use it against him. Cassidy, who had been listening intently, leaned forward, her expression hardening. "I'm in. Whatever it takes to bring Ethan down, I'm with you." With a newfound sense of purpose, the three of us set out to execute our plan, determined to expose Ethan's deception and reclaim the power he had stolen from me. As we entered the conference room to confront Ethan's business partners, I felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through my veins. This was my chance to finally break free from his grasp, to reclaim my life and my future. "Gentlemen," I said, my voice unwavering, "we're here to discuss the unethical practices of Ethan Moore and how they've been affecting our business dealings." The room fell silent, and I knew that the battle had truly begun. The confrontation in the conference room was tense, the air thick with anticipation as Alex, Cassidy, and I laid out the damning evidence against Ethan. The businessmen sitting around the table shifted uncomfortably, their expressions shifting from disbelief to outrage as the scope of Ethan's unethical practices became clear. "This is outrageous," one of the partners, a well-respected businessman named Robert, exclaimed. "If what you're saying is true, Ethan has been systematically undermining our company's success for his own personal gain." I nodded, my gaze unwavering. "The proof is all there. Ethan has been sabotaging our contracts, interfering with our client relationships, and even funneling funds from our projects into his own personal accounts." Cassidy, her eyes blazing with a righteous fury, spoke up. "I had no idea the extent of his deception. I believed he was a successful and honest businessman. But it turns out he's been using me to cover up his own financial troubles." The other partners exchanged uneasy glances, the gravity of the situation sinking in. Alex leaned forward, his voice steady and authoritative. "Gentlemen, we're here to ask that you sever all ties with Ethan Moore and his businesses. If you continue to work with him, you'll be complicit in his unethical practices and will be forced to take legal action." The room erupted into a flurry of heated discussions, the partners debating the implications of cutting Ethan loose. I watched, my heart pounding, as the tide slowly began to turn against my ex-husband. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Robert stood up, his expression grim. "After careful consideration, we've decided to terminate all of our business relationships with Ethan Moore. His actions are unacceptable, and we will not be associated with such blatant disregard for ethical conduct." A collective sigh of relief passed through the room, and I felt a surge of triumph coursing through my veins. We had won the first round, and Ethan's carefully constructed empire was starting to crumble. As we left the conference room, Alex placed a hand on my shoulder, a proud smile on his face. "Nicely done, Lila. I knew you had it in you to take this bastard down." I returned the smile, feeling a weight lifted from my shoulders. None of this would have been possible without you and Cassidy. Thank you, both of you, for standing by me. Cassidy stepped forward, her expression resolute. "Lila, I may have been Ethan's wife, but I refuse to be complicit in his lies and manipulation. He's going to pay for what he's done, to you and to me." I reached out and squeezed her hand, a newfound respect blossoming between us. Together, we're going to make sure he does. In the days that followed, the news of Ethan's unethical practices spread like wildfire through the business community. One by one, his partnerships and contracts began to unravel, the damage to his reputation irreparable. And as I watched Ethan's world crumble around him, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. This was no longer just about my own redemption. It was about reclaiming the power he had stolen from me, and ensuring that he could never again use his position to hurt me or my family. With each new victory, I felt a surge of resilience and determination. Ethan had once been the one in control, but now the tables had turned. I was the one calling the shots. And I wasn't going to stop until he was completely and utterly defeated. As news of Ethan's unethical practices continued to spread, his world began to unravel at an alarming pace. One by one, his business partnerships and lucrative contracts slipped through his fingers, the damage to his reputation proving to be irreparable. I watched with a mix of satisfaction and trepidation as the tables turned, knowing that Ethan's desperation would only continue to grow. And true to form, he soon made his move, launching a bold attack against my own company. It started with a series of anonymous calls to my clients, casting doubt on my leadership and the stability of my business. Rumors swirled, and I could feel the pressure mounting as several key accounts began to waver in their support. "Damn it, Ethan," I muttered under my breath, my hands clenching into fists. "He's not going down without a fight." I immediately called Alex, our strategy session intense and focused, as we worked to counter Ethan's latest maneuver. "This is exactly the kind of underhanded tactic I was expecting from him," Alex said, his brow furrowed in concentration. "But we're not going to let him win. We've got the evidence, and we're going to use it to our advantage." With renewed determination, we sprang into action, reaching out to our clients and partners, providing them with the irrefutable proof of Ethan's misdeeds. It was a delicate dance, reassuring them while also demonstrating our unwavering commitment to integrity and transparency. And just when it seemed like we were starting to gain the upper hand, Ethan struck again, this time with a direct confrontation. I was in my office, reviewing the latest financial reports, when my assistant knocked on the door, her expression tense. "Lila, Ethan Moore is here to see you. He's demanding to speak with you immediately." I felt a chill run down my spine, but I steeled my nerves, knowing that I couldn't back down. "Send him in," I said, my voice steady. Ethan burst through the door, his eyes wild and his usually composed demeanor shattered. "Lila, what the hell have you done?" he snarled, slamming his fist on my desk. I remained calm, meeting his gaze with unwavering determination. "I've done what I needed to do to protect myself and my family from your manipulative schemes, Ethan. You brought this upon yourself." He let out a bitter laugh, his expression twisting into a sneer. "Protect yourself? Ha! You're nothing without me, Lila. This company, this life, it's all because of me. And now you're trying to destroy everything I've built." I felt a surge of anger, but I refused to let it show. "No, Ethan. This company, this life, it's mine. You may have helped me get started, but I built this with my own 2 hands, and I'm not going to let you take it away from me again." Ethan's face contorted with rage, and for a moment, I thought he might lash out physically. But just then, the door burst open, and Cassidy strode in, her expression a mix of fury and determination. "Eth over," she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "I know about your financial troubles, your shady business dealings. You're finished." Ethan's eyes went wide, and he seemed to shrink before our very eyes. In that moment, I knew that the tide had finally turned. Ethan's reign of control was coming to an end, and I was going to emerge victorious. As Ethan stood before me, his carefully constructed facade crumbling, I felt a sense of vindication wash over me. All the years of pain, the manipulation, and the constant fear of losing everything, it had all led to this moment. Cassidy's revelation, coupled with the mounting evidence of Ethan's unethical practices, had dealt a devastating blow to his already precarious position. The man who had once wielded such power over me was now reduced to a desperate, cornered animal, his world rapidly unraveling around him. "Ethan, it's over," I said, my voice steady and unwavering. "You've lost." He stared at me, his eyes wild with a mix of fury and desperation. "Lost? No, this isn't over, Lila. You can't do this to me. I won't let you." Cassidy stepped forward, her expression unyielding. "Yes, Ethan, it is over. I've seen the evidence of your lies and your financial troubles. You're finished." Ethan's gaze darted between Cassidy and me, his usually composed demeanor shattered. "You bitch!" he spat, his voice dripping with venom. "You're both going to pay for this." I felt a surge of pity, despite the hatred I felt towards him. "Ethan, threatening us isn't going to change anything. It's time for you to face the consequences of your actions." He let out a hollow laugh, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "Consequences? You have no idea what I'm capable of, Lila. I'll destroy you. I'll destroy everything you've built." I knew that Ethan was at his most dangerous when he was cornered, but I refused to be intimidated. "Go ahead and try, Ethan. But this time, I'm not going to back down. I'm done being your victim." Ethan's expression darkened, and for a moment I thought he might lash out, but then something seemed to shift in him and his shoulders sagged in resignation. "Fine," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "What do you want?" I felt a sense of triumph, but I refused to gloat. "I want you to leave us alone, Ethan. I want you to stop interfering in my life and my family's life, and I want you to make amends for the damage you've caused." Ethan's eyes narrowed, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. "Amends? What do you mean?" "I mean, you're going to make a full confession, Ethan," I said, my voice hardening. "You're going to publicly acknowledge your unethical practices, and you're going to make restitution to the people and companies you've hurt." Ethan's face contorted with rage, but he remained silent, his jaw clenched. "And if you don't," I continued, "I'll make sure that you pay the full price for your crimes. You won't just lose your business and your reputation. You'll lose everything." The room was thick with tension as Ethan considered my ultimatum. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he let out a defeated sigh. "Fine," he muttered, his voice laced with resignation. "I'll do it." As Ethan turned to leave, Cassidy stepped forward, her expression hardening. "And Ethan, this is the last time you'll ever see me. I'm done with your lies and your manipulation. Our marriage is over." Ethan's eyes widened, and for a moment he looked almost vulnerable. But then he turned and walked out of the room, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I watched him go, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. It was over. Ethan's reign of terror was finally at an end. And this time, I knew that I had the strength and the support to move on, to build a new life free from his shadow. As I looked around the room, surrounded by the smiling faces of my family and friends, a sense of overwhelming relief and gratitude washed over me. It was Mason's 7th birthday, and despite the tumultuous events of the past few weeks, we were finally able to celebrate in peace and happiness. Dean stood by my side, his arm wrapped firmly around my waist, his gaze filled with love and pride. After all the battles we had endured, he had never wavered in his support, his unwavering belief in me a constant source of strength. "You did it, Lila," he whispered, pulling me close. "You finally broke free from Ethan's grasp. I'm so proud of you." I leaned into his embrace, feeling the tension in my shoulders melt away. "I couldn't have done it without you, Dean. You and Alex and Cassidy, you all stood by me, even when the odds seemed stacked against us." Dean chuckled softly, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "That's what family is for, Lila. We stick together, no matter what." A sudden burst of laughter drew our attention to the other side of the room, where Mason and Harper were gathered with their friends, their faces aglow with joy and excitement. Watching them, carefree and happy, filled me with a sense of profound gratitude and relief. They deserve this, Lila, Dean murmured, his gaze fixed on our children. They deserve to grow up in a home filled with love and laughter, without the shadow of Ethan's darkness looming over us. I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. You're right, and thanks to you and to everyone who stood by us, that's exactly what they're going to have. As the party wore on, I found myself drifting from one group to another, basking in the warmth and support of the loved ones who had rallied around me. Friends from work, neighbors, and even Cassidy, they all offered their congratulations and well wishes, their genuine smiles, a testament to the community that had stood by me during my darkest hours. Lila, I just wanted to say how proud I am of you, Cassidy said, her voice softened by a newfound humility, and to thank you for everything you've done to help me see the truth about Ethan. I felt a surge of empathy, reaching out to give her hand a gentle squeeze. Cassidy, you don't have to thank me. You're the one who found the courage to walk away from him. That's not an easy thing to do. She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I know, but I couldn't have done it without your support. You've shown me that there's a life beyond Ethan's shadow, and I'm determined to build that for myself. I smiled, feeling a newfound respect for the woman who had once been my adversary. You're going to be just fine, Cassidy. And if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here. As the party wound down and the last of our guests departed, I found myself alone with Dean and the kids, basking in the warm glow of the living room fireplace. Mason and Harper were curled up on the couch, their eyes heavy with sleep, and Dean pulled me close, pressing a gentle kiss to my forehead. It's over, Lila, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. You can finally breathe again. I nodded, my own eyes brimming with tears of relief and joy. Yes, Dean, it's over, and now we can focus on building the life we deserve, together. As I watched my family, safe and content in our home, I knew that the battle had been worth it. Ethan's reign of terror was finally at an end, and I had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more determined than ever to forge a future filled with love, happiness, and the unwavering support of those who truly mattered.